Right, guys, really quickly, I normally talk about these kind of things for like 15-20 minutes, but this time we'll keep it really short because this is quite a short game. This was Resident Evil 7. I came into this game pretty blind. I saw Soda Poppin years ago when this game first launched. I saw him play like the first kind of segment where you're walking around the house, you meet Mia, she chops off your hand, and that's where I stopped watching. And for years I never touched this game. I knew it was very brief, but I was kind of looking forward to playing it. I just never got around to it, which is weird because I'm a huge Resident Evil fan. We played through Resident Evil 2 Remake on stream and Resident Evil 3 Remake on stream recently. We even played through Resident Evil 4 during Christmas time last year as well. So on top of that, I've got a good knowledge of all the Resi backstories, but for some reason I just never picked this game up. This is the first game that takes Resident Evil back to, well, takes it to first person. And I think the reason they did that is because they wanted to reset the series pretty much. They wanted to go away from the kind of shooty aspects of kind of Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6, and then go back to the kind of creepy horror elements that were notorious in the first, 1, 2, and 3, and some of the other games like Code Veronica and whatnot. This game is really creepy, and I love that. I love the atmosphere that they set with it. I think the first person is a bit weird to get used to as a Resident Evil player, but as a kind of standalone game, if we take away the Resident Evil logo for a second, it feels like a pretty fun game. And from that regard, a quick point to what we were just talking about. Obviously, this game is called Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, and Resident Evil 1 in Japan was just called Biohazard, I think. So you can tell, again, there was a couple of clues that they were trying to reset this game, so I think that's why there's like the horror elements back to the actual dark, dingy creepiness. You don't have zombies in this game. There's a bit of a twist. It's these monsters, and for the most part, I quite enjoyed that. The elements of this game I liked the most, I'll talk about first, and then the elements I disliked, I'll talk about second. But for the most part, this game had highs and lows for me. Let's just get into it and talk it through as quickly as possible. The stuff I loved was obviously the setting. I liked the atmosphere that this game kind of put you in from the very beginning of the game. There wasn't any kind of messing about. It put you straight into the action, and it was genuinely creepy, and I loved that. I actually really did. I love the inventory management. It's identical to Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3 remakes specifically, I mean. I love that. I love micromanaging the inventory. I'm a bit of a nerd that way. I like choosing, okay, do I take the shotgun and the pistol, or, do I take the flamethrower and the herbs? Oh, no, I don't have enough space for all the new stuff. Okay, I love that. I love creeping around. I love looking for the items. The way that items are found in this game is done really well. Also, in my opinion, the fact that, if you get really close to it, it just pops up with X. There's an item there. Obviously, there's all your secret areas as well, your treasure maps, your actual regular maps. I love all that. That is brilliant. It's really good. So that was all done pretty well. The story itself was pretty good. It didn't really feel like a Resident Evil game for the most part, and if somebody had told me that when this game was being developed, it was being designed as some sort of project that was external to the Resident Evil franchise, like if a studio was working on this as just like a new hallway horror game, like some sort of survival simulator, and then Konami or whoever came along and just bought it and then slapped the Resident Evil logo on at the end, I wouldn't be surprised, because it kind of feels like that. There's some classic Resident Evil in here, like when you're shooting the enemies and it makes that kind of noise as the bullets hit them. That feels very Resident Evil. And then also the monsters that you fight as part of the boss fights. They've always got a monster that's covered in eyes. They've always got that in Resident Evil. And obviously we saw that in this game. Story was pretty good. I like the fact that you're going in for Mia. There's nothing too extravagant about it. You're just going in as a solo to rescue someone, and obviously shit gets out of hand. And the story took a couple of cool twists and turns, which was nice. You don't really hear much from Ethan, but obviously the other characters of Mia and the rest of them, it felt good enough. I liked it. I liked the plot. I kind of wish that the game had stuck more to the kind of horror house as opposed to moving into the boat towards the second half and then the mine at the end. It felt a bit kind of unnecessary, but obviously they were probably trying to pad the game out and give you fresh locations. A lot of Resident Evil games do move from location to location. It's going to be doing the same thing in Resident Evil 8 before it arrives. But if you look at Resi 4, you start in the village, and then you work your way up, and then eventually you get to the castle, and then there's the island. There's levels to it. I think this game was trying to mimic that a little bit. This game feels a lot kind of... it doesn't feel as long as maybe Resident Evil 4 or Resident Evil 5, but even those games aren't much longer than, 15 hours, I don't think. Depends how fast you can beat them. Maybe you can beat them much quicker, but... Yeah, do you get your money's worth for this game? I picked it up for £8. If you had bought it at launch, I don't know how expensive it was, but yeah, I felt like it was fine. I got this on sale. It was half price on the PS Store, so that felt pretty good. And that was pretty much everything I liked about the game. The setting, definitely. The classic Resident Evil survival elements with the inventory and looking about, creeping about, trying to find items in the dark. Really quickly, I loved the fact that when you got to the caravan in the middle of the game, you had the antique coins that you could put in and unlock the upgrades. I kind of just wish there was more of that stuff. Honestly, I really enjoyed that part. I enjoyed like finding the coins and thinking, what the fuck are these antique coins for? And then when I got to the cabin, I realized, oh, you can put the coins in here. So all that stuff was really good. The actual shooting mechanics, shooting the actual monsters felt pretty fun at times. There's a couple of times where like certain bosses would you just get trapped in an area and then you just get overwhelmed and die, and you feel like you don't have a lot of information from the game, as well as the fact that your FOV and your character kind of run, like, you know, Ethan and Mia, whenever you're playing them, they feel like they're an elephant ice skating up a hill. They're very slow, they're lumbering. I know the game's a survival horror, and if your characters were super fast, it would totally destroy what they're trying to create here, but it felt very frustrating sometimes where an enemy is coming at you from the side, so you turn and you try to move because you're loading the shotgun or something, and then it catches you anyway, it latches onto you, and it's like, you know, when it happens a couple of times, it's like, okay, that's forgivable, but it happened fairly frequently, and it doesn't stop you from wanting to play the game, I don't think. It's not that bad, but I don't know how they could have cleaned that up. It just felt very clunky at times. Enemies like grabbing you from behind when you're trying to run away. It feels very kind of meh. There's a couple of times where an enemy just got up in my face and then just literally, it just like kind of, you know, swarmed me. And I know they're monsters and that's what they're supposed to do, but it happened a couple of times where I just felt there was little counterplay. And honestly, when you play games like this, when you die to things that you feel are out of your control as a player, it kind of does kill your buzz. Like you go from, oh, this is spooky, to, oh man, I'm pissed off now. All right, let's just get past this bullshit. And that happened a couple of times for me. There was something I was going to mention as well. Yeah, it's the same thing with like, if you're doing anything animation-wise in the game while fighting against a monster that's in front of you, I felt like you were punished a lot from that as well. So let's say there's an enemy in front of you and you put 2 barrels in its mouth with a shotgun, you kill it and it feels great. Boom, really successful. Another monster comes along, 2 barrels in the face, boom, it dies, really successful. The third one comes along, you put 2 barrels in it and it doesn't die. You don't expect that. And then the monster kind of like lunges towards you. Now, if I'm reloading the shell of the shotgun, it goes 1, 2 into the barrels, clicks the shotgun, pumps the shotgun or whatever, and then there's a couple of seconds, just a couple of like microseconds, where like your character just does not respond. And, you know, it could be anything. It doesn't have to be reloading the gun. It could be using medicine. It could be interacting with a doorway or some sort of like operation or like some sort of mechanic in the game. When we were fighting, again, I keep mentioning the chainsaw fight with the dad in the house. If you were to kick the hanging bodies into the bad guy as he's fighting you, sure, he gets staggered, but then there's a couple of seconds where your character just stands and does nothing. And again, this kind of all kind of added to the general clunk of the game. I felt in this game, there was puzzle moments where you have to decide where to go, like tense moments where you're under pressure to make decisions. I get that that's part of it, but sometimes it just felt like, you know, you got overly punished by just not knowing what the fuck you're supposed to do. And then when you die, you realize, oh, I'm supposed to do that. And, you know, losing and defeat is part of the, you know, the path to growth. But if you want to have a streamlined cinematic experience for a game like this, I feel like the best thing to do is to kind of, you know, you got to give your players somewhat of a clue, and it's going to make them feel generally more accomplished when they play the game, in my opinion. A couple of times where we were fighting tentacle monster, you know, the guy with the eyes, we shot all the eyes, he went underneath, and then he popped back up, and then he's got one final eye in the middle where he grabs you and he's kind of holding you. I put 2 shotgun shells into his eye, and he recoiled, and I thought, okay, we're good here. And then he just went bam, 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 and killed me. And that like, I died. The game comes up, you died. Like, the game's telling you, you failed here, now you have to retry and do it again, and then you have to go back and do the entire boss fight again. And there was a couple of times like that where it was like unnecessarily cheesy or just a bit frustrating, and I think a lot of people might get caught there. Not everyone, but it's times where I feel like it's going to annoy players more than it's going to make it better or make them happy. I don't know. I feel like this is really negative. It's turned into a really kind of skeptical review, but this game was good. It just had a couple of things that frustrated me more than other Resident Evil games had. Resident Evil 3 kind of felt a bit annoying at times as well, the remake. I should say, not the original. I love the original, but the remake was kind of the same. It had kind of dumbass boss fights, these kind of scripted encounters with big monsters or big characters, and it just feels a bit kind of it just feels like it could be smoother and cleaner. I'm not a game dev and I don't know how they could do it, but just a couple of things that felt kind of like frustrating. But yeah, overall, glad we played it, glad we got through it, glad it was a short game. I don't think I would have wanted to have played this for much longer, but yeah, Resident Evil 7.